ببینید بچه‌ها، از اونجایی که ما آلفا نداریم، آلفا رو خب به ایرانیان نمیدن، ساین آف کلانیکاش خیلی بیسته. خب لایک کامنت دوست داشتید واسش بذارید، من خودم کامنت گذاشتم. اومده همه کلاس های ورلد آف وارکرافت در واقع 40 تا اسپشیالایزیشن یا 40 تا تالنت به قول تو داریم و اومده بررسی کرده و میدونیم که توی این اکسپنشن یعنی میدنایت که تغییرات خیلی زیاده، شما ویدیوهایی مثل اینو دیدید که گفتم آقا این ویدیو رو ببینید درجا و میخری، یا مثلا در رابطه با عصر جدید دنیای وارکرافت. میدونید که میدنایت اصلا خونه تکونی جهان وارکرافته، از لحاظ گیم پلی اصلا بلیزارد و اینجوری کرده، تکرار میشه. این ویدیو 1 و 2، این دوتا رو همین الان برو ببین، خیلی مهمه. ولی حوصله کنید، همه کلاس ها رو بخش بندی میخوام بشینیم بررسی کنیم دونه دونه. از کلاس دسنایت هم شروع میکنه و بازم میگم ما نمیخوایم راجع فلسفه صحبت کنیم. دلیل اینکه کلاس ها عوض شدن و خب چرا عوض شدن تو اون ویدیو گفتم و چطور بلیزارد عوضشون کردم تو اون ویدیو گفتم و دلیلش و اینا همه رو گفتم. برید ببینید، خواهش میکنم ازتون. و اینم باز بهتون میگم آلفاه، یعنی بعد از آلفا تازه بتا میاد، بعدش پیتی. حالا دارن میسازنش و سابجکت تو چنج، یعنی ممکنه خیلی عوض میشه. اوکی بریم ببینیم چه جوریه. از کلاس دسنایت شروع میکنه.
Let's kick things off with the Death Knights. They don't have too many class
زینویس فارسی هم ندارم. چرا داره؟ زینویس فارسیش امیدوارم فعال باشه. ببینیم.
specific changes in the live and alpha class trees look very similar, so
میگه کلاس تریاش توی لایو و آلفا خیلی شبیه همه.
not too much to report on there just yet. Blood has seen some massive changes though. Their death strike
نکنید خود کلاس تریو داره میگه کلاس، ولی اسپشیالایزیشن عوض شده.
healing has been reduced by quite a lot, so they will be passively tankier, which brings them close
اوکی بیشتر اومدن روی تانکی بودنش کار کردن تا اینکه مثلا هیلینگ دریافت
to
کنه.
how other tanks work. You're not entirely
که
relying
مثلا فقط هیلینگ باشه، که من این چیزو خیلی دوست ندارم. به نظرم این خیلی چیز خاصیه که تانک بلاد هیلر خیلی قوی باشه.
on death strike healing to stay alive, so you
دست استرایک هیلینگشو کمتر کردن.
should be a bit sturdier as you progress through harder content.
ولی آرمور و این چیزا هم مثل اینکه بهت میده.
Bone shield has also been changed to mostly just be a passive defensive boost.
بون شیلد رو اومدن عوض کردن و یه حالت پسیو گرفته بیشتر.
You won't be spending them as a resource to fuel other spells and abilities. You're also going to see far fewer active abilities in general, and
میگه توی جنرال ابیلیتی کمتری تو حالت اکتیو میبینید که فعال شده
a lot
باشه.
of talents have been removed, including Blood Drinker, Blood Tap,
این تالنت ها همه ریموف شدن. میتونید پاز بدید بخونید.
Bone Storm, Rune Tap, and Tombstone. One major highlight from the new spec tree is that Abomination Limb will be returning as a choice node with Gorfiend's Grasp, so
اوکی این دوتا برگشتن توی یه نود هم هستن که کدوم انتخاب
you can
بکنید.
choose how you want to AoE grip. Abomination Limb isn't going to deal any damage anymore though. Consumption
اوکی مثل که دیگه دمیج زیادی نمیده، گریپ میکنه.
has been redesigned to be an empower spell
کانزامپشن هم ریدیزاین کردن.
that provides damage reduction based on how long you charge it for, and
یه چنله و چارج میکنی بعد میترگه.
it consumes different amounts of your blood plague. Then there are new talents that let your death strike cleave and heal over time.
اوکی دست استرایک منم کلیو میزنه.
Blood Mist gives Dancing Rune Weapon an AoE effect that
این تالنت رو داره میگه که دانسینگ رون وپن شروع میکنه ایوی زدن. من خب ابیلیتی های بیشتر کلاس ها رو میشناسم، میفهمم
provides more parry, AoE damage, runic power generation, and extra healing
و کارهای دیگه هم میکنه.
potential. And then the Apex talents revolve around power.
اپکس تالنت هم که میدونید که تالنت جدیده توی میدنایت آوردن. همه کلاس ها دارن، همه اسپک دارن.
Powering up Dancing Rune Weapon with a new proc for Heart Strike and a chance to summon a Dancing Rune Weapon every time you spend a rune. So you
اوکی یعنی خودکار دانسینگ رون وپن سامون میکنه.
could have way more rune weapons floating around with all these changes in play, which should have some fun interactions with other talents in your list. That does leave you with far fewer abilities on your bar, but each one should be more impactful. You should have more snap threat, be much tankier baseline, and you'll have less resources to keep track of.
اوکی میگه ریسورس کمتری رو ترک میکنید و ابیلیتی کمتر در حال رخ دادنه. خب اینو فلسفه رو کل کلاس پیاده کردن.
So it should be quite a bit easier to play Blood Death Knight effectively, and the core fantasy is still there.
میگه کور فانتزیش مونده ولی راحت تر بازی کردن.
Now,
چون میدونی که فلسفهش یکی از ستونهای فلسفهش اینه که نیازی به ادانز دیگه نداشته باشیم.
Frost won't see anywhere near the same kind.
ببخشید آخرین زری که میزنم زرم آخرمه. لطفاً برید این ویدیو رو ببینید. این خیلی ویدیو مهمیه و برای بقیه هم بفرستید. تاکید میشه.
The revamp in this first alpha build, which isn't too surprising seeing as it just got reworked in the last patch. But
اوکی فراست رو اخیراً چون ریورک کرده بودن خیلی عوض نشده.
there are some important updates.
update
Obliterate now deals physical and frost damage.
Obliterate هم فیزیکی میزنه هم آیسی دمیج.
Shattering Blade will now also increase the damage of Frostbane quite significantly. An Empower Rune weapon is going to be instant and no longer a projectile, so there's no delay on the damage
Okay, delay نداره این Power Rune weapon instant
or effect. Frost also has a preview for their Apex talents, which all focus in on Frostworm's Fury.
اوکی این دایره دورش هم باله.
Increasing its
اپکس تالنتش هم فکر کنم بر اساس چیزشه اون اژدهاشه.
damage and providing you with a haste buff, and you'll be able to cast Frostworm's Fury again to have it fly back towards you at 50%
او شیت برمیگرده دوباره هم باز دمیج میده.
effectiveness, so you get an
میره میاد.
extra use of your frost breathing dragon every time it's up. Now, Unholy is very much in the revamp camp going into Midnight.
Unholy خیلی عوض کردن.
Festering wounds have been completely removed from
Festering wound کلا
the spec, and Unholy will instead become a master of summoning undead minions.
به جاش ارباب نکرومنسی، یعنی دو تا تایپ تالنتش اینجوریه، یا میخوای ارباب نکرومنسی بشی یا ارباب undead minion بشی.
And spreading nasty diseases. Your main rotation will still revolve around Festering Strike and Scourge Strike, but now Festering Strike causes your next 3 to 4 Scourge Strikes to summon a lesser ghoul to
اوکی میگه که چیز بعدی باعث میشه که لسر غول بیاره، غول سامون میکنی. اوکی چه باحال.
fight for you.
اسکورج استرایک غول سامون میکنه.
So you'll be pumping out little ghouls
مثل لیچکی میشه
constantly as you fight.
یعنی همینجوری فایت میدی غول میاد. با ابیلیتی شماره 1 رو میبینید اسمش میکنم از پروژکتایل، نمیدونم اسمش چیه. خب این ابیلیتیه منفجر میکنه غولا رو.
Army of the Dead is being made a much shorter cooldown once again.
Army of the Dead cooldownشو کم کردن.
So that's down to a 90-second cooldown, and it summons 4 lesser ghouls to add to your army. Another new key ability is called Putrefy, which causes
Putrefy, اسمش Putrefy.
your oldest lesser ghoul to explode for AoE damage, which is really cool and harkens back to the corpse explosion days. There are a bunch of talents that improve and augment your new minion army, and you can add different types of minions into the mix. Raise Abomination
موجودات جدیدم آندادای جدیدم میتونیم
and summon Gargoyle have been redesigned to just
مثلا دارم میگه Gargoyle و Abomination ریدیزاین
summon those special units when you use Army of the Dead.
میگه هر کدومو میاری یه اسپشیال یونیت هم با خودشون میارن.
So that's going to cut down on the number of buttons that you need to keybind.
میگه این باعث میشه که تعداد باتنایی که میخوای یوز بکنی تو کیبایندتون کمتر بشه.
On the disease side, Outbreak will still be sticking around. It will still apply
Outbreak هنوز هستش.
Virulent Plague, which works in more or less the same way, but it will also apply Dread Plague, which is a single target disease that can only be on one target at a time. So that one hits quite a bit harder and interacts with a bunch of talents. You'll also have a lot of ways to extend diseases and consume them.
میگه مثلا یه سری ابیلیتی ها دیگه اکستند میکنن دیزیز تو که اسپم نزنی، خودکار همینجوری اکستند میشن، یعنی دوباره رفرش میشن.
Early to deal extra damage. Epidemic is still going to be your AoE runic power dump, with Death
داره میگه اپیدمیک هنوز هم هست که AoE بزنی.
Coil being your single target spender. The
Coil هم single target spender.
Holy Apex talents introduce a new buff called Forbidden Knowledge. When you
اوکی یه باف جدید میگه به اسم Forbidden Knowledge.
use Army of the Dead, your Death Coil and Epidemic become further empowered with new
اوکی وقتی Army of the Dead بیارید دسکولمون میشه Necrotic Coil و Army of the Dead هم میشه Graveyard عوض میشه.
effects and extra damage, and the
پس ببینیم فانتزی کلاس و دیپس و عمقش هنوز هست.
rest of the talents gives you even more ghouls and lets you extend Forbidden Knowledge for every ghoul you summon. Just as with Blood, a bunch of abilities have
اوکی اینا همه پاک شدن.
been removed in this revamp, and it's quite an extensive list. This leaves you with a nice little neat package of rotational abilities with 2 major cooldowns in Army of the Dead
اوکی میگه پس دو تا کولداون گنده داری و روتیشن ساده تره.
and Dark Transformation. It seems to be a lot of fun so far. My only worry is how visually busy this spec could get with
میگه فقط نگرانی من اینه که ویژوالی خیلی یونیت همراهمونه و شاید ببخشید کستون خول کنه.
how many minions that you can summon at a time. Moving on to the Demon Hunters, Sigil of Flame will be moved to Vengeance only, so only
Sigil of Flame فقط برای تانکا رفته.
tanks will get to use that moving forward. Several talents have shifted
خیلی خوبه که این سیجیل بهتر بشه. چون 4-5 تا سیجیلی و یکی قبلا یوز می‌کردیم 4 تا 5 تا
around in this first build, and quite a lot of talents have been removed.
ببین خیلی از تالنت‌ها رو استاتیک کردن، یعنی مثلا هیست بده، اچ پی بده، کریت بده. این خیلی چیز خوبیه به نظرم. مثل قدیما، مثل تی بی سی استاتیکش کردن.
Huge chunk of their class tree is currently missing.
میگه کلی از کلاستریان هنوز میسینگه توی آلفا دیگه، هنوز ساخته نشده متاسفانه.
A complete picture of the DH class reworks just yet. Now, Demon Hunters get a new specialization in Midnight called Devourer.
اینا یه لحظه پاز میدم. اگه نمیدونید دیوارر چجوریه گیم پلیش، یه ویدیو گذاشتم به اسم گیم پلی دیوونه کننده دیمون هانتر جدید. برید ببینید خیلی خفنه دیوارر.
I'm going to go over that one in this video, but I will give you a link to a video where we go into detail about that new spec in the comment section below. As for Havoc, they're going to see quite a lot of abilities and talents removed, and a lot of others are being baked into existing spells
کلی از ابیلیتیش رو ریموو کردن
and
هاوک.
effects. So Fel Barrage,
Fel Barrage پاک شده، Fel Eruption پاک شده. اینا هم پاک شده.
and a handful of other talents have been removed, and Collective Anguish, Demonic, and the Hunt are now all
و کلی از ابیلیتی هم وارد چیز شدن، talent tree شدن.
Havoc exclusive. Netherwalk is being baked into Blur, so when you blur, you just become immune to death.
چه جالب، مثلا خیلی کار خوبی کردن. من میگم فلسفه بازی درست کردن. مثلا ما یه ابیلیتی داشتیم مثل بلر که اینجا اینه، و یه ابیلیتی داشتیم مثل ندرواک. اوکی، ندرواک کلا ایمیونی، خب میدونی چیه، و بلر هم یه حالت بلری مثل فانتوم اساسین بهت میده دیگه. ببین به نظر ایویژن، ببین به نظر من اینه و مثلا دو تا روتیشنه اومدن یه کاری کردن، ندرواک آوردن توی بلر، یعنی هم موقع بلر میزنی ندرواک هم رخ میده. خب این خیلی خوبه دیگه.
Damage, and you can now attack while in that state, and then
و میتونی اتک هم بدی توی همون وضعیتی که هستی، چون ندرواک اتک نمیتونستی بدی.
Glaive Tempest is being tacked onto Blade Dance, so it will just proc automatically if you hit enough targets with Blade Dance. Unfortunately, Havoc doesn't have any Apex talents to look at just yet. Those will be
Apex talent Havoc نیستش الان برای
included in a future build. So it looks like the plan is for Havoc to have fewer buttons to push in general, but we don't have a complete picture just yet. Moving on to Vengeance, they have
خیلی آخه هاوک بر اساس این بود که تو باید مخصوصا با چیزای این هیرو تالنتاش اینا همش باید این آورا مودیفایر رو ترک کنی که وقتی اینو میزنی بلید دنس فلان چیزید اینا قوی تر میشه، همش باید ترک بکنی و این خیلی رو اعصاب من هم هستش کلا.
Quite a lot of changes, but the result remains fairly similar to what we have on live servers. Fracture will be baseline instead of a talent. Soul Bomb
Fracture baseline به جای talent، یعنی خود بازی میده به
is picked up much earlier in the talent tree and now has a 25-second cooldown, which is reduced by
Soul Bomb زودتر میگیری توی talent.
haste. Demon Spikes can provide flat damage reduction, and it should be easier to keep up.
Demon Spike دیگه بهت مستقیم دمیج ریداکشن میده بهت. فکر کنم قبلا آرمور میداد اگه اشتباه نکنم. دیمن اسپایک اینجا فکر کنم فقط آرمور میداد
for longer periods of
یا
time.
داج میداد، الان دیگه دمیج ریداکشن میده.
The healing of fell devastation
اینا سادگیه، اینا بهتر میکنه بازی.
has been massively increased. Soul Cleave now strikes all enemies in front of you instead of just
Soul Cleave همه رو ایوی میزنه.
5 Spirit
یا به جای که فقط 5 تا
Bomb's base damage was increased, and Fiery Brand now brands yourself and your target, providing a 40% damage reduction buff on you
Okay, Fire Brand هم رو تو میندازه هم رو دشمن میندازه
instead of a reduced damage taken debuff on the target, and it just deals damage to your target instead. So that ability will be much easier to use in general. Quite a lot of sigil-related talents were moved into the Vengeance tree, like Quicken Sigils and Soul Sigils, and a lot of other talents have been removed to make space. Just like Havoc, Vengeance doesn't have any Apex talents to look at just yet, so all in all, it should be easier to pick up and play a Vengeance Demon Hunter, which fits in with the dev team's overall plans for combat and approachability. Moving on to the Druids, there are a lot of big changes to look forward to. For the class as a whole, Heart of the Wild has been redesigned to perform specific actions depending on your shapeshift form.
Heart of the Wild رو ریدیزاین کردن بستگی به اون شیپ شیفتد، یه کار خیلی ساده انجام میده.
Skull Bash is no longer available to resto druids, so that
Skull Bash دیگه برای رستو دروید نیست، استام میکردش.
losing their interrupt, and
Interrupt فکر کنم میکرد یا استام میکرد.
Vigil and Renewal have both been removed from the class.
Nature Vigil و Renewal ریموو شدن
Tree.
از کلاس.
Balance will see a pretty huge revamp.
Balance رو خیلی خوب کردن، مخصوصا تغییراتش روی این ابیلیتی جدیدش اکلیپس، یعنی اکلیپس رو اومدن تغییر کردن که این چیز خیلی خوبیه.
To how Eclipse works, instead of entering an eclipse by casting a certain spell multiple times, Eclipse will
میگه به جای اینکه چند تا ابیلیتی بزنی یهو وارد اکلیپس بشی، اکلیپس یوز کردنیه، یوزش میکنی.
be a button that you press.
باتن دیگه مثلا کیباینده.
It will last for 15 seconds.
تا 15 ثانیه هم میمونه.
Have a 30-second cooldown, and you
30 ثانیه هم کولداون داره، دو تا هم شارژ داره.
can talent it to have 2 charges. Eclipse will either be solar or lunar depending depending on the last filler spell you cast, so when you cast Wrath, your next eclipse will be solar.
بستگی به ابیلیتی که یوز میکنی اکلیپست عوض میشه. اگر رست یوز بکنی سولار باشی اکلیپست سولار میشه. اگر مثلا مون فایر این چیزا بزنی استار فایر چیزی بزنی مون میشه ماه میشه. یعنی بین خورشید و ماه خودش سویچ میکنه.
When you cast Starfire, your next eclipse will be lunar, so you have full control over which one you're going
یعنی خودت کنترل میکنه که کدوم سمت بخواد فعال بشه.
to enter. Now, due to these changes, your eclipse uptime will be quite a bit lower, but the general idea seems to be you want to use the time in between your eclipses to set up your dots and pull astral power, and then like
میگه ایدهش اینه که بین تایمی که اکلیپس آماده بشه تو داتا تو اینا رو میچینی و آماده میکنی و اون چیزی که میخوای انجام میدی.
up an eclipse to deal as much damage as you can, and then just rinse and repeat. There are a lot of new talents that help you stay in eclipse longer or make your
میگه سری تالنت هم وجود داره که اکلیپس رو طولانی تر میکنه.
eclipse windows more powerful, including a talent that gives you a chance to enter both eclipses at the same
یا مثلا یه تالنت داره که وارد دو تا اکلیپس همزمان میشی.
time. Another huge change is that Sunfire and Moonfire no longer increase your other abilities damage.
و یک از چیزای دیگه خب نه اینا کن اینا خیلی چیز خوبیه. مثلا اینی که الان داره میگه سان فایر و مون فایر دیگه باعث نمیشه که ابیلیتی های دیگه این پاور بشن که تو همش باید ترکشون کنی که اگر 1% یکیشون دراپ بشه تو دمیج لاس بشی. آها
But then just back
میبینی وقتی من میگم فلسفه بازی عوض میکنن منظورم این چیزاست.
to being simple dots that you want to keep up for their
فقط دات ساده است.
damage and talent interactions. This also means your damage isn't entirely reliant on those dots always being active, which gives you a bit more freedom in how you play.
ببین قبلا اینجوری بود که همیشه باید اینا اکتیو بودن.
Quite a few abilities have also been removed, like Stellar Flare, Waning Twilight, and Warrior of Elune, and almost all of your base rotational spells are going to deal significantly more damage. We do have some Apex talents to look at for balance, and unsurprisingly, they focus
Apex talentش هم این ستاست.
on improving Eclipse by providing more damage for your
و تمرکزش روی قوی تر کردن اکلیپس.
Astral Power spenders.
اوکی چه جالبه وقتی که اکلیپس میزنی تنت آخرشو بگیری میگه خودکار لانچ میکنه سولار بولت و لونار بولت خودش خودکار دمیج میده.
Give them an extra damage over time component and you'll be getting some free damage from solar and lunar bolts depending on which eclipse you enter. Feral will see a lot of changes to make the spec easier to play in a few
که آسان‌تر بازی کنی خب مسلماً فرال نیاز داشته همیشه.
different ways. Snapshotting is now only tied to Tiger's Fury and Prowl, and Blood Talons has been removed entirely.
مثلا داره میگه Blood Talons remove شده.
So your focus is going to be mainly on maintaining your bleeds, building combo points, and spending them.
پس میگه فوکسش روی این که بلیداتو داشته باشی کمبو بذاری کمبو جمع بکنی و کمبو رو مصرف بکنی همین.
It make Feral much more approachable. Quite a few abilities
و دسترسیش بهتر میشه.
have also been removed, like Brutal Slash and Adaptive Swarm, and a lot of talents have been replaced with easier to understand passive effects. Another important update
اینا اکثرا پاسیو افکت و این چیزا که هی باف و این چیزا رو باید ترک بکنی.
comes in for Rampant Ferocity, which now always causes your ferocious bite to cleave instead of just on targets that already have rip applied. So Feral has been made quite a bit easier in a bunch of different ways, but you will still have your main core rotational kit and your general play style will be very similar. There's also a new AoE ability called Frantic Frenzy that introduces this new flicker mechanic and visual. Using this ability causes a bunch of blood stealth shadow cat things to dash at your enemies, slashing at nearby foes. It looks really cool. Your Apex talents actually lean into this flicker mechanic too. When you ferocious bite, you'll have a chance to attack with one of two new attacks which uses the same flicker animation. Unseen attacks increase your damage done for a brief period of time, and then Tiger's Fury causes your next two combo point generators to always perform unseen attacks, and you get some extra damage boosts as well. Now, Guardian doesn't have quite as many changes, but their main focus seems to be smoothing out rage generation and providing new ways to spend it, reducing the reliance on overlapping defensives and making baseline abilities stronger. Survival Instincts will have 2 charges baseline. Berserk will also reduce the cooldown of Frenzied Regen by 100%.
Berserk میزنی cooldown Frenzied Regenش رو کمتر میکنه اینو منظورشه.
baseline, and a few talents have been removed. Guardian has quite a few new tools to work with too. Waking Nightmares kind
یکی از talentاش اینه، یکی مثل خودت میسازی و شروع میکنه ایوی زدن. چه
It gives you
باحاله.
a Shadow Priest's apparitions. They copy your Thrash casts, so that's going to be interesting. Red Moon replaces Moonfire and seems
Red Moon جای Moonfire اومده.
to mostly just deal more damage on a longer cooldown, and casting Mangle will extend its duration by
منگال هم درشنش رو
1
reset
second.
میکنه.
Galactic Guardian has
1
a new
second.
effect if you do take Red Moon, which deals extra arcane damage whenever you spend Rage, and then Sundering Roar is a new 1 minute cooldown that allows Thrash to stack 5 additional times, and when it expires those extra stacks deal all of their damage immediately, so that's going to offer some decent AoE burst damage. Guardian doesn't have any Apex talents to look at just yet, so I do imagine we'll see quite a few changes for Guardian over the next few weeks, so stay tuned for that.
Okay. Druid
And then
healer.
Restoration has quite a few updates as well.
You know,
By the
updates-
sounds of things, you're going to be strictly
کلا هیلرها رو همه رو آپدیت کردن بچه‌ها. همه‌شون رو خونه تکونی کردن.
limited to 5 heal over time effects on any one target at any time. Quite a lot of abilities that provided some extra heal over time effects do not anymore, like Tranquility, but its direct healing has been increased.
مثلا این سی دی ها رو کلا ضعیف‌تر کردن ولی هیلینگ های بیس رو قوی‌تر کردن که حالت عادی هیل بده.
Quite a lot of talents or passives have been combined, like
کلی از میگه تالنت ها و پسیواتون با هم دیگه ترکیب شده که مثلا دیگه گیج کمتر گیج بشید.
Soul of the Forest and Power of the Archdruid.
مثلا دارم میگه این دو تا ابیلیتی
And
با هم
then
یکی شدن.
Flourish is now a passive that causes Tranquility to extend your heal over time effects instead.
اوکی چه باحال.
Quite a lot of talents were removed
فلوریش پسیو
from the
شده.
tree and replaced with new options that provide extra functionality, like efflorescence following your life bloom target, so as long as you keep your life bloom up on someone, you don't really ever need to hardcast efflorescence again, and there are quality of life changes like Tree of Life pausing its
اوکی داشت یه ابیلیتی رو میگه وقتی که یه فلان ابیلیتی رو بندازی دیگه لازم نیست فلان ابیلیتی اسمشون چون رستورد بازی نکردم درست نمیدونم ولی منظورش اینه که دیگه لازم نیست اسپم هاتات رو ریست کنی چون خودش یه ابیلیتی بزنی خودش اونا رو ریست میکنه.
duration while channeling Tranquility, while growth and regrowth should also heal much more baseline. The dev team's goals for healers in general seems to be for them to be less reliant on larger cooldowns or procs to make their heals worth casting.
میگه که فلسفه دیولپر اینه که کلا تمرکزش رو بیس بیشتر باشه که همش بر پایه پروک شدن و بر پایه کول داون و اینا نباشه. خود ابیلیتیاتون قوی
And for them
باشه.
to have fewer but more impactful buttons.
و تعداد کیباندشون هم کمتر باشه ولی تاثیرش بیشتر باشه.
The Apex talents for Resto let Life Bloom stack up to 3 times.
اپکس تالنتش بر اساس لایف بلومه که استکش میره
Cause
بالا.
Life Bloom's healing to splash
بیشتر
to
میشه.
nearby allies.
و ایوی هم میزنه.
And
هیل میده.
gives it a new interaction with Soul of the Forest, which causes it
با سول آف the forest هم اینتراکت میشه.
to bloom 8 times in rapid succession.
Okay.
Evokers are up next, and Augmentation will be seeing some interesting updates. Ebon Might will now grant 8% primary stat up from 5%, and it can now apply to
Ebon Might به جای 5% 8% استات میده.
all damage dealing allies within 100 yards, so all of your DPS get Ebon Might.
او چه بال. پس تو رید خیلی ما آگومنتیشن مهمه واسمون. ببین به جای تارگت ببین همه وقتی ابون مایت میزنی هر کسی که تو 100 یارد باشه میگیره. توی رید کل 20 نفر رید میگیرن مثلا.
But its effect will now be split between everyone who receives it. So
او شت افکتش ولی ضعیف‌تر میشه.
you've got 2 buffs of 8% being split across however many DPS are in the party, so it should be 16% primary stat split amongst everyone if I understand this correctly. No more picking and choosing who gets Ebon Might or being really careful with prescience to target the right folks. Everyone
میگن اینجوری نیست که بخوای آدما رو انتخاب بکنی. همه میگیرن.
gets a slice of that Ebon Might pie in Midnight. Breath of Ian's temporal wound will accumulate 15% of damage done, up from 10%, and it now shows the damage number on the tooltip, which is kinda cool, but the wound does become less effective if Ebon Might is applied to more than 2 allies, so they're really trying to keep the power creep in check when you add more DPS into the mix. Hopefully this lets them balance the
آره دیگه هدفشون یه جوری طراحیش میخوام بکنن فلسفه‌ش اینه که وقتی تعداد رید خیلی زیاد میشه این قدرت آگومنتیشن رو محدود کنن انقدر مثلا نشه که مثلا 3-4 تا آگومنتیشن بره کلک فایت تموم بشه.
things a bit better. Now augmentation evokers do have some apex talents to go over.
اپکس تالنت هم دارن.
Breath of Eons will summon a future version
Breath and Eon یکی از خودت تموم
of
میکنه.
yourself to assist you in battle, and they will
میاد
cast
تو بتل کمک
Eruption,
میکنه.
Empower spells, and Living Flame.
و داره میگه این ابیلیتی ها مثل Eruption, Living Flame اینا هم کست میکنه.
Whenever you extend Ebon Might, your duplicate is also extended, and while
اوه شت چه جالب، اینم Ebon Might رو extend
your
میکنه.
duplicate is active, your Ebon Might is twice as effective, and
اوه وقتی دو بار فعال میشه، اکتیو ایمپاور میشه.
your Upheal and Eruption will deal more damage. I guess we'll see how the balance goes for augmentation in Midnight.
قویه.
Having that support spec back on the menu would be really cool. Devastation is getting some big updates too. They're kind of already on the simpler side, so they won't see the same kind of pruning as some of the other specs, but Shattering Star is being baked into Eternity Surge, so now you just fire Shattering Stars at every target that gets hit by Eternity Surge, which looks fantastic, I might add.
اوکی داره میگه فلان ابیلیتی وارد Eternity Surge شده، یه دونه کیبان کم
There's a
شده.
talent to let you deep breath a second time within 18 seconds of using deep breath,
میگه talent داره که میتونی دوباره باز deep breath رو بزنی.
which sounds kind of insane, and it should be a lot of fun to play around
میگه قرار خیلی خوش بده، دو بار پشت سرم میزنی.
with. It should also let you cover entire battlefields as you soar across. A few talents have been removed, including Firestorm, so you'll have a couple
فایرستورم هم پاک شده، چه جالب.
fewer buttons to push or
اوکی ابیلیتی کمتر میشه دیگه.
keep track of. Devastation doesn't have any Apex talents to look at.
اپکس تالنت هم نداره. خیلی خوب پرزرویشنش رو ببینیم.
Life-bind healing combo
اوکی اینا
is
تالنت جدیدشن.
getting canned. To compensate, Emerald Blossom, Verdant
نه اینا ریموو شدن، عذر میخوام، اینا ریموو شدن.
Embrace and Dream Breath are all getting some very big buffs. Dream Breath is
این ابیلیتی هایی که گفت دریم برس اینا باف شدن.
also getting a range bump up to 40 yards. Dream
رنجشون بیشتر شده.
Flight now protects you as you soar across the sky, and there's a
دریم فلایت مثلا ازت محافظت میکنه. اوکی.
new talent option that turns Verdant Embrace into a ranged heal, so you don't have to jump to your target anymore.
اوه شت چه جالب، مثلا یه تالنت داره که وردن امبرس تبدیل به رنج هیل میشه، نمیخواد جامپ کنه رو
You
تارگت.
just send over a little dream version of yourself
یکی مثل خودتو ایلوژنشو میفرستی
instead,
خودت ولی سر جات میمونی.
which means you don't have to be darting around the battlefield if you don't
که اینجوری مجبور نیست که همش راه بری توی بتلفیلد.
want to.
توی بتلفیلد یعنی زمین جنگ.
There are new talents that provide interactions between Emerald Blossom and Echo. Stasis and Dream Flight are now a choice node, so you can only pick up one of those major cooldowns, and all in all,
اوکی کولداوناشو یکیشو میتونی انتخاب بکنی.
it should be much easier to play.
و بازم آسون تر شد.
Apex talents revolve around reversion and upgrading it to Marithra's Blessing for another AoE heal that can reverse damage taken, and Dream Breath will always grant Marithra's Blessing, so there's some new interactions to keep an eye on there.
Okay.
Moving on to the Hunters, Hunter's Mark is getting a big buff. Instead of increasing
اوکی هانتر رو باف کردن.
damage
مارکسمنشو.
to targets above 80% health, it now just increases all damage by 3%. So you will always want that on a priority target or raid boss, and that might secure Hunters at least one raid spot for the foreseeable future.
اوکی چه جالب، مارک آف هانتر یه کاری کردن وقتی میندازی روی تارگت. ببین این ترک که میشه increase the target damage taken by 3%. ببین باعث میشه که اون تارگت 3% دمیج بیشتر میخوره و فکر کنم بقیه هم به همه هم بهش 3% دمیج بیشتر میزنن و این باعث میشه که همیشه هانترها یه دونه اثبات توی رید داشته باشن.
Or raid boss,
یعنی هانتر مارکسمن. البته نمیدونم این برای فکر کنم فقط برای مارکسمن
and
باشه.
that might secure Hunters at least one raid spot for the foreseeable future. For Beast Mastery specifically, they're doubling down on pet damage and bleeds. Bestial Wrath will have a 30-second cooldown baseline, and
بسیار رست شده 30 ثانیه کولداون.
Barbed Shot will no longer reduce its cooldown.
باب شات کولداونشو کم نمیکنه.
Barbed Shot will also be a rolling periodic effect, so you can stack them up on one target without losing damage, and there are talents to help you spread them without having to tab targets around. Multi-shot is being
مثلا دیگه نیاز تب بزنی تارگت عوض کنی، میگه تالنت داره که اینو خودش رو بقیه پخش میکنه.
removed, and there's a new pet AoE that replaces it and provides you with Beast Cleave and Kill Cleave, so it's just more thematically in line with Beast Mastery Hunter. Call of the Wild is also being removed,
20 ایوی میزنن به جایی که مثلا با ابیلیتیات کیل کامند اینا ایوی
and
بزنن.
there's a lot more focus being put into Bloodshed. So you'll have two major cooldowns in Bestial Wrath and Bloodshed, so it's pretty similar to what we have now. It's just more streamlined, more consistent, and less reliant on procs and cooldown reduction, and focused in on fewer abilities. Now, marksmanship has some very impactful changes too. To start with, kill shot is going to be marksmanship only.
Oh shit, kill shot فقط برای مارکسمنشیپ.
So they'll get to fully own that execute niche in Midnight.
Okay.
Another huge change is the removal of
فکر کنم قدیم هم همینجوری بود تو رس آف لیچکینگ و اینا.
streamlines, so you're going to have to fully hard cast those ancient
گفتم که ببین من چی میگم. میدنایت وو 2025 با فلسفه رس آف لیچکینگ و تی بی سی.
shots the vast majority of the time. Your casting speed won't be sped up outside a true shot, but your aim shots will hit quite a bit harder. So if you can make the longer cast times work, the harder hitting aim shots
اوکی مثلا میگه ایم شات اگه کستت کامل تر بشه بیشتر میزنه.
will hopefully make up
و
for
بافش هم کردن قوی ترش هم کردن.
That does make MM far less mobile than it currently is.
میگه که یه جوری شده که MM یعنی مارکسمان موبیلیتیش کمتره که هی راه بره بزنه. یعنی با بمونه کست امشارشو پر کنه.
There are also really big nerfs to marksmanship's crit bonuses. So
میگه کریت بونusشو نرف کردن. البته بچه‌ها دقت بفرمایید تکرار میشه همه چیز آلفا.
your damage bonus has been reduced to 25% of crit chance down from 40%, and Master Marksman causes the target to bleed for 10% of crit damage down from 15%. Crit will still probably be very strong for marksmanship, it's just not going to be quite as good moving.
الان خیلی کلید روی مارکسمان تاثیر میذاره. ولیوش انقدر زیاده که شما میبینید روی برست ویندو اوپنینگ ویندوش مارکسمان اینقدر توی دمیج دیتیلز دمیج بوده. خیلی برستش سنگینه و به نظرم برای همین ولیو و ارزش کلید رو یه خورده روش آوردن پایین‌تر.
Forward. It also looks like Explosive Shot has pretty much just been removed as an ability and can now
Explosive Shot هم ریموو شده.
be applied via the Salvo talent. That goes for
با talent خودش اپلای میکنه به جای اینکه یوز بکنی. باتن کمتر شده. Yes! باریکلا.
every hunter
چون من میدونم اینا گیم پلیش رو اعصاب بوده Explosive Shot.
specialization, by the way, which is kind of odd. No one hard casts Explosive Shot anymore, but if you liked the Explosive Shot gameplay and interactions, you'll probably be quite disappointed with the Midnight changes. Moving on to survival, they're getting an update that a lot of players have been asking for quite a while, dual-wielding survival
هانترهای سروایور میتونن دو تا ویپن همزمان بگیرن.
hunters. They'll be able to use one-handed axes, swords and daggers, so you can properly roleplay as Rexar now. It's not fully testable in this first build, but we'll get
قشنگ مثل رکسار.
there eventually. Survival as a whole is also moving away from the spear fantasy, and you'll see a lot more focused on explosives and
میگه فانتزیش از روی اسپیر و ویپن اومده فانتزیش روی ترپ و اکسپلوسیو و این چیزا.
munitions. Fury of the Eagle has been reworked as Boomstick, where you
فیوری اف دی ایگل رو تبدیل به این تفنگه کردن.
fire a huge shotgun several times in a row.
شاتگان دستته.
There's a new AoE bomb called Flame Fang Pitch, which deals AoE damage and leaves a fire
اینم بمب آتیشه.
AoE on the floor. Coordinated assault and flanking strike are being combined into one cooldown called Takedown, so you'll have fewer buttons clogging up your bars, and quite a few other
دارم میگه فلان ابیلیتی ها ریموو
talents and
شده.
abilities have been ripped out, like Butchery and its related effects. The list of talents removed for survival is quite chunky, but there are plenty of new explosives themes passives for you to pick and choose from. Okay. Mongoose Bite has also been simplified to just be a flat damage boost for
مونگوس بایت رو سیمپلیفای کردن این آسان‌تر کردن.
Raptor Strike, where multiple applications can overlap, so you won't need to keep track of that anywhere near as much.
یه نیاز ترک بکنی با رپچر همینجوری تونتون میتونی بزنی.
And then Survival's Apex talents empower Raptor Strike, giving it a chance to turn into an AoE version that always procs during takedown, and Raptor Swipe also causes your pets to lash out to deal heavy single target damage and grant you a haste boost.
دارم میگه مثلا پتتو میفرسته فلان ابیلیتی میزنی رپتور استرایک بعد هیست هم بهت میده پتت لش میکنه جامپ میکنه رو تارگت هیست هم بهت میده دمیج.
So you'll have less to keep track of, an easier rotation to execute, and Survival is finally ditching the spear.
Okay.
Then we come to the Mage.
Oh yes baby. آقا قلبا رو برای من توی یوتیوب بزنید بچه‌ای که تازه اومدن و توی کیک قلبا رو برای من تو کامنت بزنید fucking میج فراست رو داشته باشید.
Who are seeing some very big changes both to the class in general and to every specialization. Shifting power is being removed entirely, which I am
shifting power کلا پاک شده.
very happy about, while being somewhat interesting and cool. Having none of your cooldowns line up with anything else was really frustrating, and shifting power essentially just became a DPS loss if not used optimally. Shimmer will no longer have 2 charges baseline, but you
شیمر 2 تا چارج دیگه نداره.
can talent to get that extra charge back for either Shimmer or Blink, which should make Blink more competitive.
Okay, میگه بین بلینک و شیمر انتخاب میکنی.
Mirror Image will no longer reduce damage taken, and
میرور ایمیج دیگه دمیج تیکن تو کمتر نمیکنه.
Instead just be a threat reduction spell. Greater invisibility will also no longer reduce damage taken.
Greater invisibility هم دمیج تیکن بد نمیده.
And most of your defensive ability is going to come from your barrier spells, which
میگه barrier تو اینا defensive
will have a longer cooldown but will shield you for more. That's
کولدانشون بیشتره و شیلد قوی تری داره.
only for personal shields though, because mass barrier is being removed as well. So
mass barrier هم پاک شده.
you won't be able to offer a group-wide defensive spell anymore either. A lot of crowd control options have been placed in choice nodes too. So
کلی از crowd control ها وارد چیز شده، مثلا mass polymorph و ring of frost اینا با هم دیگه کمبو شدن.
mass polymorph has a choice node with ring of frost, and ice nova is
کنی شاید براتون عجیب باشه بلیزارد چرا کار داره میکنه. به خاطر اینکه از اون برام مثلا تصور بکنه تعداد سی ها خیلی زیاده. خب بلیزارد داره بازی رو هم عوض میکنه، مثلا از اون ور تعداد دمیجایی که ترش ها میزنن، کستای اینتراپتاشون 50-60% کمتر میشه برای اینتراپ. نیاز نیست اون حجم از سی رخ بده. متوجه هستین؟ اینا هم دلیلاشه.
now a choice node against freezing cold, so you'll have access to less tools at any given time. There's a long list of talents that have been removed, including things like encounters flow, slow, blast wave, and ice flows, and a lot of minor passive talents have been added in their place. Now, Arcane has seen some big changes too. The first major change is that
البته فراست و کامل توضیح نداد، فکر کنم جلوتر توضیح میده. حالا بذار ببینیم، اگه نداد من خودم بهتون میگم.
Arcane charge
آرکین به این بمباران انرژیه، بوم 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 بوم. یه ابیلیتی جدید هم داره، میبینید اینجا یه سفره انرژی میکاره و گلوله همینجوری انرژی، بمباران انرژی. ببینید
refund mechanics have been removed, so you're going to need to charge up every time you decide to Arcane Barrage. All of the Arcane Barrage buffs are also being rolled into one new buff called Arcane Salvo, so you won't have to keep track of 4 different buffs or events that empower barrage.
دیگه لازم نیست که همش ترک بکنی ببینی باف شده امپاور شده یا نه. یه چیزی هست به اسم Arcane Salvo که کلا همه رو مثلا Arcane Barrage رو قوی میکنه.
Enough for you to cast it. Arcane Salvo can stack up to 60% damage boost for your next Arcane Barrage baseline with a bunch of talents to increase that further. You can generate those stacks from dealing damage and various talent effects. A lot of management buffs have also been removed, like Ether Attunement. That's now just a talent that always makes arcane missiles hit extra targets.
مثلا به جای که ترک بکنی باف بگیری، مثلا شده تالنت این بافه که وقتی بگیریش همیشه آرکین میسلز 50% مثلا بیشتر میزنه، یا مثلا چه نوع ایوی بیشتر میزنه. می‌بینی دیگه پسیوش کردن یه سری چیزاشو که به جای باف باشه ترک بکنی، استرس بکشی، خودکار با استفاده از اون تالنته میزنه.
Evocation has also been removed as a powerful cooldown, so now it just provides
Evocation دیگه cooldown و damage increase نیست، فقط بده مانا میده.
Mana regen, and it actually is a choice node alongside Mana Adept. There's also a new AoE spell called Arcane Pulse that replaces Arcane Explosion.
اینجای Arcane Explosion اومده. Arcane Pulse میشه.
Does more or less the same thing, but it is a ranged spell with a cast time, and it also looks really cool. So you don't have to sit in melee to generate charges in AoE
لازم نیست بری تو میلی وایسی
if you don't want to. So you're mostly just back to building up arcane charges and spending them on big arcane barrages. There are a lot of talents that help speed up your arcane charge generation. You can choose to spend arcane charges to empower arcane missiles instead, or you can go with an arcane orb build that consumes clear casting to fire off multiple orbs at a time. You also
arcane charge هم میکنی arcane missiles میزنی.
You only have arcane surge and touch of the magi as major cooldowns, so the rotation should be much easier to keep up with. Arcane's apex talents buff up touch of the Magi, give you an extra charge to use, increase the bonuses from arcane charges, and the last one turns Touch of the Magi into a bomb that deals even more AoE damage.
Okay.
Now, as for fire mages, they're losing quite a lot of buttons. And
آره به فایر میج الان خیلی ابیلیتی از دست داده، ولی توی آلفا دقت بکنید اسکرج اینا پاک شدن، فلیم آف فینیکس اینا پاک شدن و یه حالت روتیشن انگار فایر میج کاتاکلیزمه. فایربال خیلی قوی شده، فایربال Fire Blast, proc Fire Blast.
That rotation is being pared down to almost the minimum you would need to execute Fire's standard hot streak mechanic. Phoenix Flames is being removed, so you'll be relying mostly on Fire Blast to trigger your hot streaks, and
Hot streak میخوای باید Fire Blast بزنی.
Scorch is being removed as a spell, which means your Fireball is your main filler spell going forward, and
Fireball filler اصلی
which is going to be far less mobile with Scorch gone. A lot of talents that introduce complexity have either been simplified, like
میگه اون تالنت هایی که کامپلکسیتی و اون حالت گیج کننده بوده سیمپلیفای شدن و تبدیل به مثلا یه چیز پسیو شدن یا توی خود ابیلیتی ها نهفته شدن.
Becoming a flat 30-second cooldown reduction for combustion, or have been removed entirely like Sun King's Blessing or Call of the Sun King. A lot of talents have been removed.
اینا همه ریموو شدن. البته بازم میگم آلفا وایس
from fire actually and replaced with various passive boosts to your core rotation, and ignite functionality has been spread across more talents as well.
ایگنایت هم میگه فانکشنالیتیش کار کردنش توی تالنت ها بیشتر میبینید که پخش بشه دات بندازه برای ای
As a trade-off, your leftover rotation spells will deal significantly more damage, and you should see big payoffs for every hot streak you consume and during every combustion.
میگه هات استریک که میگیری و اون ای میزنی پیاف بیشتری داره، یعنی جواب بیشتری میگیری. یعنی چی؟ یعنی تو یه حالتیه که معنای بیشتری داره با دمیج بیشتر.
Window. This mainly leaves you with Fireball, Fire Blast, Pyroblast, Flame Strike, and Meteor for your core rotational abilities, with Combustion as your major cooldown. So definitely very different from right now. Fire Mage has been made much simpler to play, and you'll be casting Fireball a whole lot more. For the Apex talents, Fire will be empowering Combustion even further, reducing the cooldown of Fire Blast during Combustion, and you'll be able to extend it as long as you can keep your hot streaks rolling. And then Frost is seeing some big changes too. The Winter's Chill mechanic has been replaced with a new debuff called Freezing. Most abilities apply stacks of freezing to your enemies, and then Ice plants can consume stacks to deal increased damage. So the general idea is the same, but because Freezing can stack up to 20 times, you can save up a whole bunch of damage, and you don't have to use abilities in a specific perfect order to benefit from that increase.
میگه مثلا یه حالت استک فریز اومده بالاتر که مثلا نمیخواد ترکش کنی یا همش ابیلیتی بزنی، انقدر استکش مثلا تا 25 تا میره بالاتر و گیم پلی رو بهتر میکنه. میدونی چی میگم؟
Damage. So you should be able to just fire off flurries when they come up, because you'll always benefit from those extra freezing stacks, which should make the rotation less punishing.
هر موقع مثلا فلوری آماده است میزنی.
Overall, your procs remain very similar. Fingers of Frost will make Ice Lance not consume freezing stacks but still deal extra damage, and Brain Freeze still resets the cooldown on Flurry. Icy Vein
مثلا میگه یه سری چیزا هنوز مثل قبل برین فریز کولداون و فلوری اینا کم میکنه.
has been removed completely, and the only major cooldown Frost has moving forward is Ray of Frost, which generates a lot of freezing stacks and can be talented to be an AoE or a single target.
اوکی مثلا میگه کولداون هستش هم ری اف فراست که میتونی تالنتش بکنی که AoE بزنی یا سینگل.
You can also talent Ice Lance to consume freezing stacks on targets around your target, so there's some great AoE potential there.
مثلا میتونی کاری بکنی که آیس لنس هم مثلا روی تارگت ها اون محیط اطراف یه AoE بزنه یا مثلا فریز بندازه یا همچین چیزی.
So well, quite a few abilities have been combined together to reduce button.
کلی از ابیلیتی هم کامباین شدن. مثلا فراست بولت بزنی چند تا فراست بولت بزنی خودش تبدیل به گلیشیال اسپایک میشه.
Now Frostbolt becomes Glacial Spike every 30 seconds or so while in combat, and Blizzard will turn into Comet Storm after you cast Ray of Frost. Summon Water Elemental is returned.
Water Elemental هم برگشته.
So if you missed your water blob, you'll be happy to hear that. And for the most part, Frost does feel very familiar. It's still the same set of core rotational abilities. There's just fewer buttons to push, less buffs to keep track of, and
میگه همون حالت قبلی فراسته، فقط AoE بیشتری میزنه، ابیلیتی کمتری واسه یوز کردن داره و بافای کمتری واسه ترک کردن داره. خودش خودکار تو پسیو.
Really, it's only Ice Lance getting a damage boost from those freezing stacks.
یعنی Ice Lance هم قوی تر شده.
So you don't have to line things up super neatly anymore. For their Apex talents, Frost will be summoning
اینم Apex talent.
Hands of Frost that deal
چقدر باحال از رو زمین ببین این یخا رو میبینی از تو زمین میره.
damage and applies
واه میبینی مثل مار میره.
stacks of freezing while increasing your spell damage. Ray of Frost will summon 4 Hands of Frost and you'll get a second charge of Ray of Frost, so that sounds quite powerful in
اوکی یه دونه چارج اضافه Ray of Frost هم فکر کنم Apex talent میده.
Indeed.
و 4 تا از تو زمین دست میفرسته یخی.
Moving on to the monks, Chi Burst has been removed for Mistweaver and Wind
Chi Burst برای میستویور و چیز پاک
Walker
شده.
monks, and Rising Sun Kick was removed for Brewmaster.
Rising Sun King هم برای برومستر پاک شده. بهتر روتیشن کمتر.
Diffuse Magic
او خیلی برومستر روتیشن سنگینی داره.
is now a passive talent that causes Fortifying Brew to reflect harmful magic effects back to that.
چه باحال. آجی دیفیوزینگ ماجیک هم پاک کردن که باعث میشه فورتیفای برو وقتی یوز بکنی خودش هارمفول ماجیک رو دیسپل میکنه. بهتر
caster if possible, so they're kind of getting spell reflect tacked onto
انگار اسپل رفلکت بهش دادن.
Fort Brew, but they're losing the magic damage reduction that diffuse magic offered. Brewmaster
فقط ماجیک دمیج ریداکشن رو نداره.
will see quite a few changes that make it easier to understand and play, including a lot of tooltips being updated, so it's clearer what your abilities are actually doing. Quite a few talents were removed, with power being consolidated into a smaller core kit, and then there are some cool new talents like Fuel on the Fire, which creates worlds of flame that spiral outwards when you keg smash. Empty the cellar
رو زمین طوفان آتش میاره وقتی کگ اسمش میزنه.
To reactivate exploding kegs to throw 5 additional kegs at nearby enemies, as if you weren't smashing enough kegs over your enemies' heads. Jade Flash gives you AoE crackling Jade Lightning.
Okay, Jade Lightning AoE.
With a cooldown, and there are also a lot of new passives that increase the effectiveness of stagger and your various brews. Master's Apex talents revolve around generating extra damage when you keg smash. The empty barrels can also ricochet for cleave damage, and there's also a heal over time effect whenever you use Fortifying Brew or Celestial Brew that applies to a couple of nearby allies as well. For the Windwalker monks, you're going to see quite a bit of pruning for spell modifiers, and that damage will be
میگه کلی از چیزا رو تغییر دادن مخصوصا برای چون که خیلی روی کمبو و خیلی روی اسپل مودیفایرها و بافا تمرکز داره کلاس مونک و روگ
rolled into the baseline abilities
و به جاش بیسلاین رو قوی تر کردن. خود مثلا فرض کن تارگت پام باید بیشتر بزنه
to make them more
impactful تاثیر بیشتری
They
بزنه.
want you to mostly be focused on procs, resource management, and combo strikes while executing your rotation. So things like Fury of Zuen, Martial Mixture, and Transfer the power have been removed. A huge surprise to me is that they're also removing Storm Earth and Fire, which
Storm Earth و Fire رو پاک کردن. پشمام چرا؟
is really disappointing because
چرا؟ خیلی باحال بود.
that's been at the core of monk gameplay since Warcraft 3.
راست میگه از وارکرافت 3 استورم ارث اند فایر جزء کمبوش بود. چن استورم تاو اگه تو وارکرافت 3 بازی کرده باشید 2 تا 2 بازی بکنی همین شکلی ان.
You'll instead be building around weapons of order as your main cooldown, which reduces the chi cost of abilities, gives blackout
میگه به جاش مثلا یه ابیلیتی داره که به اسم weapon of order که مثلا یوزش میکنی و چی کاست ابیلیتیاتو کمتر مصرف میکنی و که همون ابیلیتی اصلی بیشتر بزنن. Okay,
get some extra cooldown reduction, and you'll also reset Rising Sun Kick and gain 2 chi. Jadefire Stomp has
مثلا Rising Sun Kick هم reset میشه تازه چی هم تازه بده.
Also been removed as an active ability, but there's a new talent that tacks it onto the end of your Fist of Fury casts, which is basically just Jadefire Fists without the cooldown. Strike of the Windlord and Whirling Dragon Punch are now a choice node together, so you
این دو تا نود شدن جدا از همن.
can only pick up one of those options. Another new talent called Skyfire Heal increases the crit chance of Rising Sun Kick for each nearby enemy, and Rising Sun Kick damage splashes onto all nearby enemies.
چه باحال این AoE میزنه Rising Sun Kick.
With damage being reduced beyond 5 targets. And there are quite a few other passive talents that provide minor bonuses as well. Tracking your mastery is also going to be a bit easier thanks to a new buff that shows you what your last used ability was, which you'll be able to highlight using one of the in-game UI options.
اوکی میگه مستری ترکش خیلی راحت‌تر شده چون که یه بافی آوردن که با استفاده از اون آخرین ابیلیتی که یوز کردی رو میتونی بفهمی چون میدونی که مستریش اینجوریه که ابیلیتی 2 بار نباید بزنی یعنی باید هر کدوم یه بار بزنی یه مستری خاصی داره.
Windwalker's apex talents are called Tiger Eye Brew, which increases your crit chance during your next weapons of order. There's some bonuses for crit strike damage, and you have a chance to increase the damage of your Fists of Fury. So not super interesting in the grand scheme of things, but all of that extra crit strike and damage will
پالادین بریم پالادین رو ببینیم.
turns into Hammer of Wrath and deals
اوکی یه سه چیز پالادین عوض شده.
extra damage of dusk.
آفرین بلسینگ آف داون و بلسینگ آف داست اومدن ریورک کردن که اون بافی که شما میگرفتین آجی ترکش با ویکارا اینا با باف و این چیزا. ببین بلسینگ آف داون دیگه پسیوه میگه وقتی بالای 85% HP باشی همه دمیجایی که مثلا دریافت میکنی مثلا فرض کن مثلا چه میدونم کمتره یا مثلا یه همچی چیزی حالت پسیو ساده داره یا هیل میشی. اوکی
And Dawn is being removed and being split into 2 talents. Blessing of Dawn now redirects 5% of all damage done to allies within 20 yards to you, up to a cap as long as you are above 85% health, and then Blessing of Dusk gives you a flat damage reduction buff that increases the
بلاسینگ اف داست فقط 10% دمش کمتر میشه.
lower your health goes. They're also
هرچی هم اچ پی میره پایین‌تر.
losing some passive healing effects like Judgment of Light and Seal of the Crusader.
یه سری میگه پسیوای هیلینگ هم کمتر شده.
For Holy specifically, Light of Dawn is being updated to a standard
لایت آف دان رو عوض کردن. ایول.
circle AoE effect.
سرکل ایوی به همه هیل میده. نه که مثلا روتو کنی سمت اون طرف فانوس رو بگیری.
Instead of a frontal cone, which can be
ایوی آفرین.
talented up to a 25-yard range, so that is going to be much easier to use, and you won't have to turn around to the ranged if you ever wanted to blast them with Holy Light. It's
خیلی خوبه.
Target cap is being removed and will now instead reduce its healing beyond 5 targets, and there's a new talent that gives Word of Glory and
و بیشترم Beyond the 5 target هم هیل میده.
Light of Dawn and Absorb Shield. Quite a few smaller cooldowns have been removed or replaced, and Holy Prism will now be a choice node with Divine Toll, so you can only pick up one of those at a time. Barrier of Faith was moved to the PvP talent section, Blessing of Seasons has been removed, and Tears Deliverance is now a passive.
یه ابیلیتی آوردن واسه پالادین خیلی باحال بود. بکن نمیدونم چیه که خودکار اچ پی مردم میاد پایین روشون بیکن میندازه و هیل بدی یکی دیگر اونا هم هیل میشن.
Effect that procs when you use Avenging Wrath. Aura Mastery has some new talent options like casting
آورا مستری هم قوی تر شده.
Divine Toll at 100% effectiveness whenever Aura Mastery is used. There are also some new damage options like Liberation, now giving your Word of Glory and Light of Dawn healing a chance to also damage nearby enemies. So just like everyone else, you're going to have fewer cooldowns and buttons in general, but each one should be more impactful.
این در کل فلسفه هیلینگش همینه. دکمه کمتر تاثیر بیشتر.
Their Apex talents give you yet another beacon style spell.
همونه اپکسشه.
And this one is entirely passive. While in combat you apply a beacon of the savior to the lowest health ally within
میگه توی کمبت هر کی که اچ پیش کمتر باشه روش بیکن اف سیویر میافته.
30 yards. That beacon copies up to 50% of the amount you heal when
50% هیلتو به اونم
all the
میده.
talents are unlocked, and it will automatically jump to a new target if it ever heals a full health player. The last talent also gives the target a 10% damage reduction absorb shield whenever it jumps, which sounds really useful.
ابزورب هم تازه بهش میده.
Protection will see a significant switch around in their kit. They're losing Eye of Tear, Holy
Eye of Tear پاک
Shield,
شد.
and other effects like Moment of Glory and Barricade of Faith in favor of empowering fewer abilities like giving Guardian of Ancient Kings 2 charges. Most
Guardian of Ancient Guardian حاجی دو تا چارج داره. برگام
talents or effects that interacted with Eye of Tear will instead proc from Divine Toll, which includes the Templar Hero Talent tree. The damage reduction you gain from Consecration is also being separated from your Mastery, so your Mastery now just increases block chance, but you can also block spell.
مستریشو از Consecration جدا کردن و مستری فقط دیگه بهت بلاک میده، روی اون تاثیر نمیذاره.
And periodic effects baseline, which is going to be really nice. There's a new talent that gives Consecration a 5% damage reduction buff, so that
و یه talent داره که Consecration 5% damage reduction بده.
gameplay will still be present, but now you won't just fall over if you let your Consecration drop.
آفرین ناکن میگه که آفرین من متوجه شدم.
There are also quite a
اینجوری نیست که اون کانسکریشن از دست بدی رو زمین نباشه تو دمش کمتر نخوری دیگه. یک لحظه مثلا 5 ثانیه حواست نبود دیگه مثلا به چخ رفته باشی.
new talents that buff Consecration in a variety of ways.
تو مستری روش کار نمیکنه دیگه.
And fun new interactions like allowing Judgment to chain to nearby enemies. So it's going to largely be the same kind of
Judgment هم فکرم ایوی میزنه.
gameplay. You'll just be much tankier baseline.
حاجی Judgment ایوی داره میزنه برگام.
with fewer spells to keep track of. Retribution will see quite a few changes, but you'll end up in largely the same place. Crusading Strikes has been removed, so we're back to hard casting
Crusader Strike پاک شده بچه.
Crusader Strike, and there will be a stronger focus on Templar Strikes as a talent option. Templar Slash now also always crits. Divine Hammer is being moved into the Templar Hero Talent tree, and you
Divine Hammer رفته جزء هیرو تالنت تمپلار شده.
just proc that every time you use Divine Toll, so that's going to be
و خودش پراک میشه هر موقع دیواین تول بزنی.
totally passive in Midnight.
پسیو توی میدنایت.
And just like other specs, Hammer of Wrath now replaces Judgment during Avenging Wrath. So those two spells are basically just combined. Another huge change is that during Avenging Wrath. Midnight, and just like other specs, Hammer of Wrath now replaces Judgment during Avenging Wrath. So those two spells are basically
واه چه ابیلیتی جالبی. همر آف رست و جاجمنت با هم دیگه جاشون رو عوض میکنن. نگاه کنید وقتی که بال در میاری جاجمنتت میشه همر آف رس، وقتی که بال نداری میشه جاجمنت.
Hammer of Wrath now replaces Judgment during Avenging Wrath. So those two spells are basically just combined.
دو تا ابیلیتی کامباین
Another
کردن.
huge change is that Execution Sentence and
Execution Sentence
Final Reckoning have been
و Final Reckoning هم با هم دیگه ترکیب شدن.
smushed together, so you get the benefits of both and
با هم دیگه both benefit
no
داری.
longer have to choose. Quite a lot of talents have been removed and replaced with simpler passive effects too, like Shield of Vengeance now being a passive that procs when you use Divine Protection. Blade of Justice damage has also been taken down a notch, but both Templar's Verdict and Divine Storm have been buffed significantly,
Divine Storm باشه.
so your Holy Power
Blade of Justice نه.
spenders will be more impactful.
میگه هولی پاور اسپندر ایمپکتفول شده ولی یعنی خیلی بیشتر میزنه ولی منبع اینکه هولی پاور رو بگیری کمتر شده.
And should make up more of your damage profile. So you're going to play in largely the same way. You just have less restrictive talent choices for single target versus AoE scenarios.
میگه فقط اینکه بین AoE سینگل تارگت همش چیز کنید انگار یه حالت فلکسیبیلیتی داره. پریست هم ببینیم.
Then we come to the priests. Quite a lot of talents have been shifted out of the class tree and into hero talent trees or spec trees. So Death and Madness and Vampiric Embrace were moved to the Shadow tree. Shadow Fiend was moved.
داره میگه این ابیلیتی رو رفتن توی شادو قسمت شادو تالنت و اینا رفتن تو لایت.
Into the Shadow and Disc trees. Halo has been moved into the Archon hero talent tree.
مثلا هیلو رفته برای آرکان، فقط برای هیرو تالنت آرکان.
And Prayer of Mending is only available to Holy Priests and
پیر مندینگ فقط برای هولی
is
پریست.
learned at level 11. Then there are a whole bunch of other talents and abilities that have been removed, like Renew, Divine Star, and
رینیو اینا پاک شدن. دیوان استار پاک شده.
Word.
رینیو تازه جدیدن روش کار کرده بود. چرا پاک کردن؟
Life with some new talents to take their place, most of which seem to be passive buffs to things like Stamina, Intellect, Haste, or various spells. What's also
میگه بیشتر تالنت یا بهت اینتלקت میده یا استامینا میده، هیست میده.
interesting is that a lot of baseline abilities are now talents. So Psychic Scream, Desperate Prayer, and Fade are all in the class tree now instead of being learned baseline. Power Infusion is sticking around, so you'll still have all your DPS fighting over who gets that when you're in a group. For Discipline
Power Infusion هم هست.
specifically, things are going to get much easier. Quite a lot of damage increase buffs and talents have been removed, and you'll just deal more damage baseline. Atonement was also doubled up to heal for 60% of damage done, so you'll
اوکی اتومنت شده 60% دمیجی که میدی تبدیل به هیل بشه.
healing should be far less spiky. Atonement healing will be reduced when healing
قوی تر شده پس دمیج باید بیشتر بدی. دمیج هم باف کرده.
more than 5 targets, but that should be a smooth spread of healing instead of just dropping off when you start healing that extra target. And in addition, full health targets won't count towards those numbers, so you should always get the maximum benefit out of your atonements, even if they're on players.
او چه جالب مثلا میگه ماکسیمم افکت اتومنت رو میگیری، یعنی اگه مثلا یه تارگت اچ پیش پر باشه وقتی ای داری میزنی اونو دیگه حساب نمیکنه توی اون هیلینگا، فقط اونایی که اچ پیشون در حال هیل شدن نه اچ پیشون زیر 100%
Who
حساب
don't necessarily
چون از 5 تارگت بالا کمتر هیل میده.
need them. A lot of talents have been simplified, removed, or replaced with a passive effect. Evangelism has been redesigned, and that will now fire off a radiance at
Evangelism رو ریدیزاین
200% effectiveness, and Radiance will have no cooldown and get 40% reduced mana cost for 10 seconds.
و میگه رادینس کولداون نداره و بعد مانا کاستش هم
So you can spam a couple Radiances, get your atonements out to everyone more or less instantly, and start healing right away. For their Apex talents, Penance has a chance to turn your Powered Shield into Void Shield.
اوکی اپکسش اینجوریه که پننس وقتی میزنی پاور شیلد تبدیل به وید شیلد میشه.
Which is a buffed up version that also applies to 3
ورژن باف شده چیز شیلد
nearby allies.
و
There's
ایوی رو بقیه هم
some passive bonuses to pick up, and the last point causes Void Shield to reflect 50% of damage taken back to enemies, and that
و آخرش اینجوریه که وید شیلد 50% دمیج تیکن رو برمیگردونه به انمی.
damage will heal via atonement, which sounds very
و
cool
اون دمیج از طریق اتومنت دیسیپلین پریست هیل میده به اون تارگت.
indeed.
اوکی.
For Holy, they're going to see quite a few abilities removed, so Renew and Heal are gone as casted spells, and Lightwell and Symbol of Hope were both
هیل و رینوال اینا پاک شدن حاجی برای هولی پریست.
removed as talents, along with quite a few others. Your Mastery will now also affect Renew Healing, which can only be applied through using specific spells, and there's also a talent that removes Sanctify, gives all of Sanctify's bonuses to Serenity, and causes Serenity to also heal allies within 40 yards. So for any encounter where everyone is spread out, or maybe if you just don't want to juggle two holy words, that's going to be a powerful new option. Most effects that procced buffs for heals have been removed, and your base heals will just be stronger across the board. Holy has typically been quite an accessible and easy to pick up healer, and that's definitely going to remain the case in Midnight. Holy's Apex talents focus on Cosmic Ripples by giving Prayer of Mending Healing a chance to upgrade Flash Heal to Benediction, which heals for more and causes a Cosmic Ripple. The middle talents massively increase Cosmic Ripple healing, and then each Pulse of Divine Hymn also causes a Cosmic Ripple, and during Apotheosis, Flash Heal will always be Benediction, so there's some huge AoE healing potential there. It's also worth noting that Oracle has been reworked, and Premonition has been replaced entirely. Now the hero
چیزو پاک کردن. پرمنشن مال اوراکل، هیرو تالنت اوراکل کلا پاکش کردن که 3-4 تا باف بود، همش بعد چیز مال هیرو خیلی رو اعصاب بود، خیلی فرق.
Talent trees focus on penance or prayer of mending by providing various bonuses and giving you an extra charge of those important spells. Quite a few buttons and talents have been removed. Dark Ascension
کلی ابیلیتیش پاک شده، بهش این ابیلیتی کیره خر می‌بینید تق میزنه تو تارگت، تنتیکل.
Last Word, Psychic Horror and Void Torrent were all deleted from the talent
اینا همه پاک شدن. دارک اسنشن هم پاک شده.
tree with some new shiny talents to take their place. Devouring Plague was renamed to Shadowword Madness. It deals initial damage and high shadow damage over time and conjures a shadowy apparition. That's still going to be your main insanity spender. Void Eruption was renamed to Void Form to reduce confusion between the spell and the form names, and that will turn into Void Volley instead of Void Bolt. Shadow Crash has been redesigned into Tentacle Slam, so instead of firing off a purple projectile, you now summon a huge Void Tentacle that slams everything in front of you and AoEs around your target, which looks super cool, and of course that will still apply your dots, so you can still get rolling in AoE very quickly. Shadowy apparitions won't spawn from Mind Blast or Void Bolt, but their base damage has been doubled. You can also talent to massively increase the damage of apparitions that deal damage to your target with Shadow Word Madness, so that's going to be a big single target damage boost for the most part. Shadow's Apex
single target ضعیفی داشت، خوبه.
Talents provide more shadowy apparition spawns, causes them to sometimes also fire off a Void Bolt, and then Tentacle Slam also activates an effect from one of your idols, so you'll have more access to those power-ups as well. All in all, Shadow is looking really fun with these changes in place.
Okay, fun pass.
As for the rogues, some of the specs are going to see some significant changes, and it follows the same vein as everything else. For Assassination, you'll be using fewer abilities during your
ability کمتر داری واسه یوز کردن Assassination.
cooldowns. The way in which you apply
rotation damage زدنی
various debuffs has been streamlined, so Caustic Spatter is now applied from Envenom and Kingsbane instead of Mutilate or Ambush. You won't need to enter Stealth to apply bleeds to multiple enemies. In fact, your entire AoE setup has been changed. Crimson Temple
این AoE ستاپی که می‌کردی عوض شده دیگه، خیلی راحت‌تر شده. اون بافا مودیفایرها رفتن بیسلاین ها رو قوی‌تر کردن، رفتن تو خود ابیلیتی‌ها.
Tempest has been reworked, so it's no longer a finisher spell, and it will spread Garrote and Rupture dots to nearby enemies, so you can spread your dots much easier and it won't take as long to set up. There's also a big focus on energy management, and a lot of the new talents reflect that. To make
کلی از talent بهت انرژی میده، مدیریت انرژی راحت‌تر.
Make room, and to simplify the spec quite a bit, a lot of talents have been removed, like Sanguine Blades, Serrated Bone Spikes, Tiny Toxic Blade, and Vicious Venoms. The main decision you need to be careful of is when to pull energy to string multiple envenoms together, rather than maintaining
میگه باید همش حواستون باشه که کی از انرژی مصرف بکنی برای انونوم‌های مختلف، انونوم ابیلیتی انونوم.
high energy for extra damage from your bleeds. So the gameplay of maintaining your bleeds and poisons is still Assassination's bread and butter. It's just a streamlined version of that fantasy. As for their
هنوز فانتزی پویزن و دیباف و ایناش هم یه خورده هستش.
Apex talents, you'll get a huge energy regen bonus whenever
energy regen بهت میده.
expires, increasing for each envenom that you used. There's some flat damage boosts and some extra damage being added into Kingsbane with extra poison procs and combo point generation.
Okay.
Outlaw has quite a lot of updates too. Roll the Bones has been reworked to have 4 different results instead of 5.
اوکی roll the bones 4 تا ریزالت داره و به جای 5 تا
and the buffs have
been
significantly simplified.
بافش هم عوض کردن، simplifyش کردن.
You're basically now just rolling between 1 and 4, and each
بین 1 تا 4 رول میزنی.
Current buff is going to be the same but with something extra tacked on top.
همشون یکیه ولی هر کدومشون اکسترا تک داره، یعنی یه چیز کوچولو اضافه هم داره.
So if you roll a 1, which is the worst result, you'll only get the double sinister strike buff. If you roll
اگه رول 1 بدی دابل سینستر میگیری.
a 2, you get that same buff, but sinister strike and ambush also generate 1 more combo
مثلا رول 2 همونم میگیری ولی مثلا یه چیز دیگه هم قوی تر میشه.
point. If you roll a 3, you get both of these buffs plus an extra 30% cooldown reduction from Restless Blades. And then if you roll a 4, which is called Jackpot, you get everything plus 10%
جکپات دیگه همه رو بهت میده دیگه. جکپات در اصل تازه کریت هم میده.
extra crit chance. So instead of tracking buff names and
میگه به جای اینکه مثلا ترک باف نیم بکنی، اوکی،
understanding exactly what each one of them does, now you just have to look for the first word in each buff and translate that to 1, 2, 3 or jackpot, which would be much easier to see at a glance if you want to re-roll early or not. In addition to that, Between the Eyes is now a flat damage buff that can stack. Quite a lot of talents have been removed, which gives you less active abilities to pick up, and a lot less access to some of the defensive or utility spells, and your rotation will mainly be focused around Sinister Strike, Pistol Shot, Dispatch, and Between the Eyes, with Blade Flurry for AoE, and Roll the Bones and Adrenaline Rush for your cooldowns and buffs. Outlaw's Apex talents give you a chance to apply 2 stacks of Between the Eyes damage bonus, giving Dispatch some extra damage, and lets you build up some free Between the Eyes casts that immediately reset its cooldown.
Okay.
Sub-rogues haven't been entirely left out, though they do have quite a few buttons and cooldowns still. Shadow Dance had its base cooldown.
اوکی، مثل که هنوز رو ساب کار نکنم، یه کلی هنوز کولداون و باف داره. بعد وایسیم روش کار کنن چون بچه آلفا دیگه. بریم شمن ببینیم.
Is gone. Thunderstorm.
شمن خیلی باحال شده حاجی، شاید باورتون نشه، خیلی باحاله.
Lasso is being moved to the PvP tower tree. Stone Bulwark Totem is gone.
استون بولواک هم پاک شده.
Thunderstorm is now
توتمیک ریکال هم پاک شده.
Elemental only, and Totemic Recall was removed as well. Earth Elemental will only last 30 seconds now, but it's down to a 3-minute cooldown.
3 دقیقه کولداون داره ارسن بودن ولی 30 ثانیه میمونه.
Poison Cleansing Totem is now a choice node with
Poison Cleansing هم تو choice
totem, so you'll have to pick which utility you want to take into a dungeon or raid encounter.
Okay.
And Chain Heal's cast time was cut down to 2 seconds, down from 2.5. Each
cast time chain heal هم کمتر کردن.
Specialization will also now only learn 1 spell baseline, down from 2, so you'll kind of have 1 less talent to play with in the class tree.
Okay.
For Elemental specifically,
Elemental یه ابیلیتی داره خیلی باله، یعنی گذاشته شماره 1ش خیلی باله.
You'll have fewer abilities and cooldowns to use. Storm Elemental, Primordial Wave, Liquid Magma Totem, and Ice Fury are all being removed, so you're mostly down to your lightning and fire spells, and most talents will just be boosting those leftover abilities. You still have a few cooldowns to work with in Stormkeeper, Fire Elemental, and Ascendance, so you've got more to work with when compared to some other classes, and there is a new passive talent that summons a greater Storm Elemental when you use Stormkeeper, so those 2 abilities.
مثلا استورمکیپر میزنی یه دونه یه المنتال سامون میکنه خودش میزنه واسط.
These kind of got rolled into one. There's also a new talent that replaces Flame Shock.
Volcanic Blaze خیلی البته خفنه.
Called
جای فلیم شاک اومده میزنی رو همه چیز میندازه.
Voltaic Blaze, which applies Flame Shock to up to 6
رو همه چیز میندازه.
enemies and causes your next lava burst to hit every enemy affected.
و بعد یه کاری میکنه که لاوا برست هم ایوی بزنه.
Hit by Flame Shock, so it's
رو هر تارگتی که روش فلیم شاکه، یعنی میزنی رو همه فلیم شاک میندازه، دمیج هم میده، دات هم میندازه، لاوا برست میزنه، خودش خودکار به همه ایوی میزنه. این میگن سیمپلیفای. ولی هنوزم باید از مغزت استفاده کنی. آفرین.
It's a very quick bursty fire AoE combo that you can talent into, which is a lot of fun and works very well alongside Ascendance. Enhancement will see the same kind of treatment with fewer buttons.
اونم داره، اینم داره این ابیلیتی شو.
Less buffs to track and fewer
باف کمتری رو ترک می‌کنی.
highlighted spells on your bars. The dev team also noted that they want to make playing either hero talent tree easier to understand. They'll be losing Elemental Blast, Hailstorm, Ice Strike, Primordial Wave, and a bunch of other talents. Maelstrom Weapon has also been changed to only affect the cast time of Lightning Bolt and Chain Lightning as baseline. Ascendance now replaces
ملستورم رو خیلی ساده کردن که فقط روی لایتنینگ بولد و چین لایتنینگ تاثیر میذاره.
This is Doom Winds when talented, so they've been combined. Enhancement also gains access to Voltaic Blaze, so you can quickly apply Flame Shock to multiple enemies, and Fire Nova is a passive talent that can proc when you use Voltaic Blaze. So quite a lot of stuff has been combined together. You'll
کلی ابیلیتی کمباین ترکیب
have
کردن.
less abilities to keep track of, and you'll see a lot more passive effects in general. Enhancement does have some Apex talents to look at, which mostly empower Crash Lightning. When you
Crash Lightning رو قبل
spend Maelstrom Weapons, you have a chance to cause your next Crash Lightning to ignore its cooldown, and the weapon enhancement effect can overlap.
او شت چه بال. وپن انهانسمنت این انچنت هایی که رو وپن میزنی و اوورلپ میتونی بکنی با هم بزنی.
Some damage boosts for Maelstrom
و اومدن این وپن انهانسمنت هاشو هم قوی کردن.
weapon spenders and weapon imbuements.
چون اسمش روشه انهانسمنت.
And the last point causes crash lightning to deal even more AoE damage and increase your attack speed. Now, as for restoration, you're going to lose a whole bunch of spells.
آره کلی ابیلیتی از دست داده و با همون فلسفه‌ای که بلیزارد گفتم داره میره.
Ancestral Protection Totem is gone, Cloudburst and Earthen Wall Totem are gone, Healing Surge is being
ببینید دیگه همه رفتن. هیلینگ سرج هم پاک شده.
removed in favor of Healing Wave being your main filler spell, Mana Tide, Unleash Life.
میگه تالنت ها که قبلا روی هیلینگ سرج تاثیر میذاشتن الان روی هیلینگ ویو تاثیر میذارن. گزینه شماره 3 فکر کنم.
And Wellspring are all gone too, so they're really taking the whole fewer
ماناتاید هم پاک شده.
buttons thing to the next level with Restoration Shamans. In addition to all of those cooldowns being removed, Healing Tide Totem and Ascendance will now be
اینا هم اسندنت و هیلینگ تاید توی تالنتن.
a choice node, so you can only take one of those at a time. This mainly leaves you with Riptide, Healing Wave, Chain Heal and Healing Rain as your main spells, with a couple of cooldowns for when things get spicy. The trade-off is that all of those spells should be significantly more powerful
ولی خب این ابیلیتی عادی خودشون بیشتر
in
میزنن.
their own right, without having to rely on buffs or auras
به جای اینکه همش روی نیاز به تقویت کننده و باف و این چیزا داشته
to
باشن.
make your heals move health bars. You still offer some great utility. Spirit Link Totem is still
اسپریت لینک توتم هنوز سر
very
جاشه.
unique, and you will have things like Windrush Totem, Earth Elemental, and your Poison or Fear Cleansing Totems. So it's not like you have nothing, but you will have far, far less as we head into Midnight. Next up, we have the Warlocks.
Yes, my baby.
There aren't any huge sweeping changes to the class's general kit. You'll still have a lot of your utility, but the class talent tree will be losing quite a lot of damage bonuses like
بله کلاس تالنتش خود کلاس والا کلی دمیج بونوساش مثل سول کاندویت پاک شده.
Demonic Tactics, Socrathar's Guile, Soul Conduit, Demonic Inspiration, and Wrathful Minion, and a lot of curse effects are being reworked.
کلی از کرسان پاک کردن، ریورک کردن، یعنی ترکیبی کردن.
Like Amplify Curse and Teachings of the Satyr have been removed, but you will be getting a new talent that lets you AoE Curse.
ولی به جای تالنت داریم که رو همه کرس میندازه. ایویه مثلا.
Foul Mouth causes your Curse of Exhaustion, Tongues, or Weakness to curse all enemies within 10 yards of the target, which sounds kinda crazy.
مثلا این تالنت رو بگیری کرس اف اگزاستن و تانگنس و ویکنس و اینا رو بزنی رو خودش رو همه میفته. مثلا هر مثلا ویکنس بزنم رو همه اطراف ویکنس میندازه و این خیلی قویه. توی میتیک پلاس خیلی قویه. ببین خیلی قویه من دارم بهت میگم.
That's going to be very useful in pretty much any kind of content with multiple enemies.
خودش هم داره میگه دیگه من میدونم چقدر قویه.
There's also a talent that lets you use your demonic gateway twice before
What demonic gateway twice use کنی؟
triggering a cooldown so you can zip back and forth more often.
یعنی بری بیای.
Now Affliction is getting a much larger
افلیکشن که آجی پاره کردن.
rework.
مالفیک رپچر رو پاک کردن. تمام من خودم اینجا رو سریع بهتون میگم تمام ابیلیتی‌هاشو بافتر کردن. آنستیبل افلیکشن مثل زمان لیجنه میتونی آنستیبل افلیکشن و اسپم تا 5 تا بندازی و بعدم خب دمیج دات دیگه دات دمیجه و بعدم خدمت درس شود که ساف سید اومده که میتونیم مثل نسخه لیجن 3 تا سید اف کراپشن بندازی بهتر کنیشون و اسپم سید اف کراپشن
And
بزنی.
you can now have up to 5 unstable afflictions on one target, and a lot of bonus damage effects are being rolled back into Haunt. Quite a few talents or effects are being removed, like Shadow Embrace, so you have fewer debuffs to keep up and maintenance buffs to worry about, and Vile
بله اینجوری کلی دیباف و اینا رو کمتر میبینی.
Taint is being removed as well.
وایل تنت هم پاک شده.
To shore up the Agony AoE situation, a new talent will let Agony
ولی به جای که بتونی اگانی بندازی یه تالنت داری که یه تارگت اگانی بندازی روی یکی دیگه هم خودش اگانی میندازه.
to 2 targets at once, so similar to Twin Moons from Balanced Druid if you ever played that. So your rotational loop will be back to making sure your dots are up, keeping Haunt up as often as you can, and spending shards on Unstable Affliction or Seed of Corruption. You won't have to pull shards as often with Summon Dark
یعنی بین سول شار یا روی انستیبل افلیکشن میزنی یا روی سید اف کراپشن میزنی.
having a 2-minute cooldown now, and there's also a new 1-minute cooldown called Dark Harvest to play around with.
و یه ابیلیتی هم آوردن کولدان به اسم دارک هاروست. Okay.
This kind of works like Malefic Rapture, except it doesn't scale with the number of dots you have active. As someone who hated Malefic Rapture, these changes look amazing and get the spec back to its old dot-centric gameplay. Affliction's Apex talents give Haunt a new cleave damage effect.
هانت ایوی میزنه اپکسش.
Increase its damage and effects, and your haunt damage has a chance to summon a desperate soul to deal
و یه روح میاد
extra damage.
که روح هم چیزه، یه دونه ناترزیمه، یه دردلورد میاد ایوی میزنه. راست میگه، یا هم رفته.
Demonology will also see significant changes.
دمولوژی هم خیلی عوض کردن.
Fell imps will no longer have an energy mechanic and will last much
فل امپا دیگه انرژی ندارن، خیلی بیشتر هم میمونن. تا یه دقیقه میمونن.
Imps you can control at any one time is being strictly limited. So you'll only be able to have 3 imps at a time, but you can increase that limit via a few talents. The most important extra change here is that when you have your max imps out, Hand of Gul'dan will change into
وقتی که ببین دیگه نیاز به باف نداره ترک کردن. وقتی که به ماکسیمم ایمپت برسی، هند آف گولدن قیافش عوض میشه آی آف گولدن. نیازی به ویکارو دیگه نداری که بشماری این پا رو بدونی چند تا اکتیون، چون تایمرشون بیشتره و رو زمین هم هستن. انقدر میزنی تا تبدیل بشن. بعد عاشقتم بلیزارد. یس من شاید دمو بالاخره بازی کنم چون بدم میاد ترک کردن اینا رو.
which deals higher single target damage.
بعد بیشتر هم میزنن.
Swap back and forth between an AoE Hand of Gul'dan and a single target Eye of Gul'dan by managing how many imps you have out. There's also a big change to how many spells or abilities you have to get things rolling. So Vile Fiend has been rolled into summon Dreadstalkers, so if you take that talent, Dreadstalkers will just summon a Vile Fiend
دد استاکر بزنی خودش وایفین هم میاره یا اولفاز
as well.
میدونی چقدر ابیلیتی کمتر یوز میکنی دیگه لازم. یکی از رو اعصاب بودن دیمولوژی برای من این بود که کیباین زیاد داشت.
Grimoire Felguard has been removed as have many other talents.
گریمور فلگارد هم پاک شد. آخش مرسی بلیزارد. من بالاخره دیمولوژی بازی میکنم بهتون قول میدم حاجی.
Like Doom.
من آخرین باری که بازی کردم بلک راک فاوندری بود. نمیدونم 10 سال پیش 9 سال پیش بود.
Demonic Strength, Bile Scourge Bombers, Soul Strike, and a lot of others. A few unused spells have also been removed from your spellbook, like Corruption, which should keep things nice and tidy and make it obvious which abilities are actually worth using for newer players. A lot of those talents have been replaced with buffs for your remaining spells and summons, so the main active summons you'll have are your Felguard Pet, Fell Imps from Hand of Gul'dan, and Summon Dreadstalkers, so there are a lot of talents that just buff up those summons or add in.
می talent ها هستن که اون ابیلیتی ها رو باف میکنن و دیگه یوز کردنی نیستن، خودکار خودشون رخ میدن.
Additional effects. There's a new talent that turns your demonic tyrant into a huge melee demon, which is kind of interesting.
Okay, یه talent داره demonic tyrant تبدیل به یه موجود میلی میشه.
Have a new summon Doomguard talent that gives implosion.
و یه دومگارد جدید داریم.
A 10% chance to summon a Doomguard, which is
یه talent داره که خود شانس داره که دومگارد رو سامون کنه همینجوری. ایول.
Increased by 10% for every imp you sacrifice, so that could be a fun.
و هر چقدر هم ایمپو ساکریفایس بکنی، گزینه شما رو 4 بزنی بکشیشون، شانس اومدن این دومگارد بیشتر میشه.
Little mini game deciding how many imps.
یعنی یه مینی گیمیه که تو انتخاب میکنی که اینا رو ساکریفایس کنی یا نه.
Worth that extra chance. Their apex talents buff up the damage of Dreadstalkers.
من اینو دوست ندارم. از الان دارم میگم این بعضا بازم شانسی خوشم
And summon a greater Dreadstalker alongside them, buff up your Felguard's damage, and there's a new passive effect that builds up for every demonic core you consume, and the more you use, the higher the chance a big AoE will trigger. Now, Destruction won't see quite as many changes. Most of the updates.
ببین هاووک رو کردن 20 ثانیه. ببین 20 ثانیه انقدر ایویمون قوی میشه که نه.
Coming in Midnight revolve around removing temporary buffs to Chaos Bolt and Rain of Fire.
میگه اون بافایی که مثلا باز قدرتمند شدن که آسپالت و رین فایر میشن اینا رو کمتر کردن.
To buff their baseline damage.
خودشون رو به جاش قوی کردن.
Numbers, as well as just removing maintenance buffs to make the spec easier to play. So just like other specs, a lot of talents have been removed and replaced with simpler passive effects that just buff the damage of your rotational spells or provide simple stat boosts. A lot of remaining talents
هیرو تالنتش این لیزر است.
have also been shifted
می‌بینی لیزر میخوره
around and
میام هیرو تالنت اپکس تالنت عذر میخوام.
Some are now choice nodes like Soulfire becoming a choice node with dimensional rift.
چه جالب سول فایر و دایمنشنال ریفت با هم کردن. آخه چون اصلا هیچ کس دایمنشنال ریفت رو انتخاب نکرد، یعنی طراحی کردن ولی ما یه بار هم پیکش نکردیم، حتی یه بار تو یک دانجن.
It also looks like your general rotation isn't changing that much. You still have Immolate, Incinerate and Conflagrate as your main fillers, Chaos Bolt and Rain of Fire as your main spenders, and Summon Infernal as your main cooldown, with Havoc there to create that unique destruction 2 target damage window.
این هاووک اینجا زده 15 ثانیه نمیدونم، ولی من هواکو دیدم برای 20 ثانیه میداد، چون من ویدیوهاشو دیده بودم، گفته بودن برای 20 ثانیه است. احتمالاً شاید یه تالنتید میگیره که 15 رو میکنه 20 ثانیه.
And then for their apex talents, Incinerate has a chance to deal some extra damage. That effect will also grant you bonus crit and haste, and then every time you cast Chaos Bolt or Rain of Fire, you are guaranteed to fire off those embers. And then last but not least, we come to the warriors. A whole bunch of talents have been ripped out of the class tree, including Thunderous Roar, so that cooldown is just gone, and Avatar.
یه کلی از چیزا رفتن ببینید برای مثلا رفتن توی talent tree
is being moved into the Fury and Protection spec tree.
مثلا آواتار برای فیوری و پروتکشن اسپک تریه. Okay?
So arms won't have access to that extra cooldown either. Last Stand is being moved to the class tree, but it's
Last Stand رفته برای کلاس تری. چه جالب.
now a passive effect.
و الان پسیو شده. اوکی.
That only procs if your health falls below
و اگه اچ پی زیر 20% باشه رخ میده. یوز کردنی نیست.
20%, which sounds kind of dangerous. I wouldn't ever want
آره یه خورده خطرناکه.
to really rely on that. Rend is now an AoE effect for arms and fury.
اوکی. رند ایویه رو بقیه میندازه پشمام.
Intervene will have an AoE option that redirects damage from allies within 3 yards up to a cap. Piercing Howl now also increases your allies' movement speed, so warriors are getting a stampeding roar, and their shouts can be improved even further to offer new utility effects like Leech, more movement speed, and even additional.
اوه چه باحال. What the fuck ایول. میتونی شاتات رو قوی تر بکنی. ایول تالنت داری شاتات قوی تر میشه. چقدر خوب آجی. Holy shit, battle shot grants you an additional triple. اوکی مثلا اینو بگیری battle shot 3% بیشتر به تو اتک پاور میده.
Attack power. For arms warriors, the dev team are refocusing back on Colossus Smash as the major cooldown.
arms هم عوض شده بچه‌ها خیلی. arms ببین اسلوتر میزنه ولی بیشتر میزنه. شمشیرزن قهاره.
Warbreaker has been removed and its effects are now just baseline.
Warbreaker remove شده و افکتش رفته توی بیسلاین بازی.
And there are quite a few new
یعنی خودش رخ میده.
that interact with Colossus Smash in new ways. Sweeping Strikes is being improved to ensure arms stays on top in 2 target encounters.
میگه هنوزم سویپینگ استرایک هم قویه و بافش کردن که تو تارگت خوب بزنی.
And a lot of talents have been removed, like Ravager, Skull Splitter, and Martial Prowess. So you'll have fewer cooldowns or abilities to use, and
cooldown کمتری داری واسه
fewer buffs or conditional passives to keep track of. Quite a lot of the newer talents are passive increases to bleed or ability damage. Arms Mastery has also been completely reworked.
مسترش هم عوض کردن که فقط دمیج بهت میدن.
It's now just a flat damage boost while you're using a two-handed weapon, which is all the time, so that's just a flat damage increase now. This leaves arms in a rather basic place. You don't really have a big cooldown outside of Blade Storm, and your rotation is back to just a few core abilities.
اوکی خوب به نظر من خوبه. آرمز قدیم رست آف تلیشکین هم خیلی قوی بود ولی ساده بود.
For Fury, they're going to see quite a few changes. More effects will proc Enrage, so both Odin
میگه یه سری چیزا توی Enrage رخ میده.
Fury and Blade Storm automatically enrage you.
اوکی اودین فیوری و اینا اتوماتیک تو رو Enrage هم میکنه.
Blast should be more impactful and create a nice rhythm for your overall rotation.
بلاسترست هم میکنم باف کردن.
Quite a lot of talents have been dropped, including single-minded Fury.
اشن جگرنات هم چیز شده ریموف شده. آنسلات ریویجر آخش خوبه بهتره.
Fury, so they're not even trying to make one-handed Fury work anymore.
Single minded Fury هم پاک شده که کسی وان هند یوز نمیکنه.
You're going to lose Ravager, and Odin's Fury and Bladestorm are actually a choice talent now, so you can only pick up one of those at a time. And then quite a lot of talents have been removed or replaced with simpler passives, which seems par the course across the board really. You can pick up Avatar in the Fury tree, so you'll have more cooldowns when compared to Arms, and Fury is still going to be the faster paced of the two, where you need to decide which ability to use and when, rather than just smashing stuff on cooldown. There's also a new fun talent called Kill or Be Killed.
Okay, این یه talentیه به اسم Kill or Be Killed.
If you die, you instead fly into an unstoppable rage.
چه جالب. اگه بمیری میری تو حالت Enrage. مثل این هیروه بود توی چیز یه هیرو هست توی لیگ آف لجند اسمش هم رفته میمیره نمیمیره بعد بلند میشه میزنه.
Becoming unkillable and immune to any movement impairing effect.
Unkillable میشی نمیمیری و ایمیونم توی استان و اسلو اینایی.
If you can kill your would-be
و اگه بتونی اون طرفو بکشی
killer during this time, you get at least 20% of your max health back.
20% اشویت برمیگرده و زنده میمونی اگه بکشیش.
Otherwise, you just die. And that
ولی اگه نکشیش تو اون چند ثانیه کلا میمیری.
can only proc once every 5
و هر 5 دقیقه عدالت تو آرنا چقدر حال میده این.
minutes. So that's going to be a really fun last stand mechanic. And then protection won't see quite as many changes. Revenge will now replace slam and deal damage to 3 targets baseline, but it can be talented to be an AoE, so Thunderclap will be your main standard AoE moving forward. Deep Wounds is only applied from Execute now, and Blood Surge procs off of Rend damage instead, but most everything else seems to be the same, except those changes from the class tree that we mentioned earlier. And that's it. Every major
خب بچه به مدت 1 ساعت و 23 دقیقه فقط حرف زدم، دهنم سرویس شد، ولی چه تغییراتی، چه میدنایتی. حالا اینا رو تصور بکنید با نسخه اصلی و بتا و اون تنظیماتی که بلیزارد و یو آی اینا، عجب چیزی شد.